Colonizing other planets is like the ultimate cosmic adventure. It's a challenge that has captured the imagination of humans for centuries, and it's something that we've always dreamed of doing. One of the most popular candidates for this role is Mars. And this isn't surprising. Mars is a rocky planet that is similar to Earth in many ways, and it even has evidence of water on its surface. This makes it a prime candidate for human colonization. Many scientists and engineers are working on plans to send humans to Mars and establish a permanent settlement there. But what about the other candidates? There are many planets and moons in our solar system, so why not colonize something else? For example, Ceres? Ceres is the ultimate cosmic treasure trove. It's a dwarf planet, not a full-fledged one, just like Pluto. It's located in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. This dwarf planet is the closest to the Sun, and it's adorably tiny. The entire planet is about the same size as the state of Texas. So why choose it? Because Ceres may be a rich source of valuable resources. The surface of Ceres is covered in craters and other geological features, and scientists believe that beneath its surface, it has a thick layer of water ice, which means that deep underground it may have an ocean of liquid water. If this is true, Ceres could be a valuable resource for future space missions. It could potentially provide a source of water for human exploration of the solar system. So, can we colonize it? And if so, how do we do that? Actually, many scientists and space enthusiasts have proposed this idea. To colonize Ceres, we'd have to use the same methods used to establish colonies on the Moon, Mercury, and the satellites of Jupiter and Saturn. Don't worry, it's not that hard. We just need to figure out how to adapt to a very thin atmosphere, to extreme temperatures and pressure and all the other nasty stuff. But let's stay hopeful. At the end of the day, it all comes down to resources. We'll need water, minerals, silica, and other raw materials. All this would help us to create a self-sufficient colony. And luckily, Ceres is full of these things. So first of all, we could locate the places of residence inside the craters of Ceres. We could build domes there that would protect us from all sorts of dangerous things, like radiation. We could also mine regolith in the asteroid belt. Regolith is a residual soil that appears as a result of cosmic weathering of the rock. Basically, it's something like the surface layer of soil on the Moon. Why do we need it? Well, because we could use it to 3D print the base layers next to the ice, so that our bases would be located near the water. We could then use these base layers to print other structures, like houses. We could also collect ice and organic molecules to create water, and by combining water with regolith, we would get soil in which we could grow plants and food. Wonderful. There's also another option. A colony can be created underground, that is, right next to the icy crust of the planet. Now, if in the future we'll be some kind of super cool scientists, we could try to accelerate the rotation of Ceres, which sounds crazy, but would be pretty beneficial. It would help us to create artificial gravity inside the underground colonies. And speaking of gravity, all of these things may sound cool, but let's discuss the difficulties that lie ahead of us during colonization. To colonize Ceres, we would need to overcome a number of challenges. To begin with, we need to develop technologies that will help us even get to Ceres. We need some kind of ships that would be capable of long flights into deep space. For them, first we need to create some kind of nuclear thermal or nuclear electric traction, and maybe an even more advanced type of fuel. Then we'll also need technology to help us sustain life in this small, rocky world. That is, tools to extract and use local resources. Also, since there is no atmosphere on Ceres, we would have to wear spacesuits and live in pressurized habitats. And this is only the beginning. Living on the planet itself won't be an easy task either. For example, what about extreme temperatures, or radiation, or the mentioned incredibly weak gravity? The latter is definitely one of the biggest problems. The gravity of Ceres is only 3% of the Earth's. You wouldn't want to accidentally fly into outer space while playing football, would you? But the fact that any jump could send you on an endless journey isn't the only problem. Even if you somehow stay on the surface of the planet, you'll experience the same symptoms and problems as astronauts who hang out on the International Space Station. For example, loss of muscle mass, decrease in bone density, deterioration of vision, problems with the cardiovascular system. Wow, who would have thought that gravity is so important? So therefore, if we wanted to survive on Ceres, we would need either a bunch of doctors or some kind of artificial gravity. And don't even get me started on how low gravity will slow down production and work. And of course, we can't go anywhere without discussing money. Colonizing Ceres will cost us a huge expense, especially taking into account all of the above. And yet, despite all these things, Ceres still stays one of the best candidates for colonization. For example, Ceres contains lots of methane and ammonia. They can be used as a manufactured fuel or a nitrogenous gas, or you can just mine it there in order to colonize Mars and Venus. Even low gravity has its advantages. Thanks to it, it will be very easy to launch spacecraft from Ceres. We'll waste much less fuel, which means that transportation from Ceres to other planets would be much cheaper and more efficient. So even if Ceres doesn't become our permanent residence, it can become a good transport hub, something like a spaceport. We could use it as a base for mining all sorts of useful things from the asteroid belt. Then, we could transport all these resources back to Mars or Earth, and it can also become a refueling station for ships traveling further beyond the solar system. Sounds cool and pretty sci-fi-ish, doesn't it? But it seems that any attempts to create a permanent base in the asteroid belt will have to wait. Colonizing other planets is a difficult and complex task. It will require the cooperation and expertise of many different people, and it will involve developing new technologies and overcoming many challenges. Before we go to Ceres, we need to build infrastructures on the Moon, Mars, and somewhere in between. Otherwise, any attempts to colonize it would be prohibitively expensive and would most likely fail before future missions could even reach it. But the more colonies we create, the more likely it is that sooner or later we'll build another one on Ceres. This would not only open the asteroid belt to economic exploitation, it would also serve as a stepping stone to the outer solar system. This, in turn, could lead to colonizing the moons of Jupiter and beyond. In other words, the rewards of colonizing Ceres could be great. Not only would it allow us to explore and understand this fascinating world, but it could also provide us with valuable resources that could help us to further explore and settle the solar system. Life on Ceres would likely be challenging, but exciting, as humans would be making a new home for themselves and exploring the mysteries of the universe. Just imagine all the new planet-themed restaurants and shops we could have. Welcome to Ceres Mart, where everything is out of this world. So if you're a fan of cosmic treasure hunts, Ceres is surely a rich and rewarding destination. Just make sure you bring some weights on your feet so you don't fly anywhere. The soil beneath your feet is red and dry. The place is freezing cold. Rusty-colored dust is floating in the air. You make one step, then another. It's hard to move because of the thick layer of dust your feet are sinking into. You're on Mars. And you've come here after hearing some absolutely incredible news. These days, the so-called red planet, indeed, looks dry and dusty. But scientists think that this world might have been very different. A long, long time ago, they have found some evidence of a huge ocean that could have existed on the surface of Mars about 3.5 billion years ago. And this ocean probably covered hundreds of thousands of square miles. It all started with numerous satellite images of the surface of the red planet. They were snapped at different angles. As a result, researchers managed to construct a relief map of the area. They charted out more than 4,000 miles of specific formations that had most likely been carved by rivers. Those formations could also be channels once carved out on the seafloor. Scientists used the data gathered by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter in 2007. They analyzed the thickness of the ridges and their angles and location. Their main goal was to explore the topographical depression called Aeolus Dorsa. It turned out that all those years ago, this part of the red planet had been undergoing a series of constant changes. They could have been caused by the rapid movement of rocks, pulled around by currents and rivers, as well as noticeable increases in sea level. Researchers also noticed a pretty clear boundary that separated the southern highlands of Mars, elevated and highly cratered, from the smooth lowlands of the planet. It looked very similar to a shoreline left by a ginormous ocean. This all likely means that in ancient times, there indeed was an ocean on the surface of Mars, and a large one at that. What is even more exciting? The existence of such an ocean might mean the existence of life. This discovery can tell scientists a lot about the ancient climate on the red planet, as well as its evolution. We now know there had to be a period on Mars when the planet was quite warm, and its atmosphere was thick enough to keep so much liquid water. What's even more incredible, the climate in the northern hemisphere of Mars, 3 billion years ago, could have resembled the one we have on Earth nowadays. But then, where is this ocean now? What happened to it? Perhaps the climate of the red planet was becoming cooler, and the surface of the ocean froze. There's a theory claiming that these days, the ocean remains in its frozen state, deep under a layer of rock, debris, and dust under a northern plain called Vestitas Borealis. Or the ocean's waters could have been lost to the atmosphere and eventually spaced through the process of atmospheric sputtering. During this process, atoms get knocked away from the atmosphere after colliding with high-energy particles coming from the sun. Anyway, the theory of an ocean that once covered a substantial part of Mars' northern hemisphere hasn't been confirmed yet. Scientists are still arguing about its existence. As for now, Mars is a very cold world with an average temperature of 80 F. The planet's surface is rocky. It's covered with dry lake beds, craters, volcanoes, and canyons. The ocean that might have existed on Mars isn't the only awesome thing about this planet. Let's speak about those sandstorms raging on the red planet. In movies, they're depicted as incredibly powerful forces of nature, destroying astronauts' camps and tearing their spaceships into pieces. But how much of it is true? Mars is indeed infamous for producing dust storms so massive they can be seen by telescopes on Earth. They sometimes cover continent-sized areas and can last for weeks at a time. But besides them, there are much rarer storms that occur once in 3 Mars years, which is about 5.5 Earth years. Such storms are larger and much more intense than regular ones. They encircle the entire planet. That's why scientists call them global dust storms. At the same time, it's unlikely that even a global dust storm could cause serious harm to astronauts or their equipment. Even though Martian storms are massive, the wind speed reaches 60 miles per hour tops. That's less than half the speed of most hurricane-force winds on Earth. Plus, this comparison of wind speeds can be kinda misleading. The atmosphere on Mars is just 1% or so as dense as the atmosphere of our planet. It means that the wind there needs to blow much faster to cause any damage, or even fly a kite. Now, let's move to the next amazing phenomenon spotted on the red planet. When you look at it from a distance, it looks like an eye. There are even some winding channels that look like veins running through the eyeball. But the closer you get, the less the formation looks like an actual eye. It's actually a giant crater almost 19 miles in diameter. around the crater, which looks as if it has a pupil, there are other, even bigger craters. They likely formed billions of years ago. That's when Mars had to withstand multiple attacks of space rocks. But why is the eye crater darker than the surrounding landscape? Scientists think that once, water filled the ginormous pit. Remember those channels? They were likely carrying that water, and since the crater was filled with water, it stopped some substances and minerals from eroding away. Your next destination is Valles Marineris. That's an enormous canyon, or rather a canyon system, that runs along Mars's equator. It stretches for more than 2,500 miles. It's also 4 times as deep as the famous Grand Canyon on Earth. The thing is so huge, it could span the entire continental United States from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean. Most scientists think that Valles Marineris is a huge tectonic crack in the crust of the red planet. It could have formed when the planet was cooling down in the distant past. Another breathtaking sight on Mars is the largest shield volcano in the entire solar system, Olympus Mons. It's more than 370 miles in diameter, which means it's almost the same size as the state of Arizona. The mountain is also 16 miles high and rimmed by incredibly tall cliffs. To imagine the sheer size of the volcano, let's make some comparisons. The largest volcano on Earth is Mauna Loa, around 2.6 miles high and 75 miles across, which actually sounds pretty impressive, but the volume of Olympus Mons is around 100 times larger than that of Mauna Loa. The Martian giant could swallow the whole chain of Hawaiian Islands from Kauai to Hawaii. Scientists have been wondering for quite some time why this volcano is so large. It might be the result of lower surface gravity and higher eruption rates, or the reason may be the red planet's crust, which is very different from Earth's. On our planet, the crust is made up of 15 to 20 moving tectonic plates. As plates move over hotspots that produce lava, new volcanoes form, and the already existing ones become extinct. That's why lava can get to the surface through many vents. But on Mars, the crust isn't broken into the same tectonic plates as on Earth. And the lava has nothing to do but pile in one very, very large volcano. Now, if you visited Mars and decided to go on an evening stroll, you'd witness a strange phenomenon. It occurs on the red planet after sunset, when temperatures fall below 80 AF. A bizarre, mysterious glow spreads across the Martian sky. Unfortunately, without special equipment, you wouldn't be able to observe this soft glow. Visible only in ultraviolet light, this night glow is the result of chemical reactions that occur dozens of miles above the surface of the red planet.
Have you heard about a diamond star that could put all the riches on Earth to shame? Or how about twinkling stars with surfaces made of solid iron? So let's take a look at these weird stars and try to unravel their mysteries. There's a star in the Centaurus constellation that was nicknamed Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Yes, it was named after a Beatles song, because it basically is a Beatles song. You see, the star was discovered to have a massive diamond at its core. Now you may be wondering how big this diamond really is. Well, it's estimated to be about 10 billion trillion carats. That's a 1 followed by 34 zeros. To put that into perspective, the Hope Diamond, which is one of the largest diamonds on Earth, is a measly 45.5 carats in comparison. Can you imagine the size of the ring you could make with this star diamond? And it's about the same mass as our sun. But don't go getting too excited about the prospect of owning this diamond just yet. Even if you were Jeff Bezos, you wouldn't be able to afford it, according to Ronald Winston, CEO of Harry Winston, Inc. The diamond is so big that it would likely depress the value of the market, so you'll have to settle for a much smaller diamond engagement ring. One interesting thing about the Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds star is that it's incredibly dense. In fact, It has the mass of the sun crammed into an object only a third the diameter of Earth. That's like trying to fit an elephant into a shoebox. And yet, despite its massive size, it's actually quite cool, with a core temperature of only about 12,000 degrees Fahrenheit. By comparison, the core temperature of our sun is about 27 million degrees Fahrenheit. Since the discovery of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, several other crystallized stars have been found, some with diamond hearts the size of Earth. It just goes to show that the universe is full of surprises, and you never know what kind of treasures you might find out there in the vast expanse of space. And this isn't the only weird star we've discovered so far. There are many strange, unexplained things in outer space. For example, let's take Vega. Vega, also known as Alpha Lyrae, is a bright star located in the constellation Lyra. It's one of the brightest stars in the night sky and is easily visible to the naked eye from most parts of the world. Now, Vega may look like a beautiful, bright star to us Northern Hemisphere folks. But little do we know, it's hiding a secret. It's actually quite squashed. You see, Vega's high spin rate causes it to bulge at the equator, kind of like a cosmic belly. It rotates once every 12.5 hours, which is pretty fast for a star, and it throws material out around its waistline. It's almost like the star is hula hooping. This material is further from the center of the star, so it experiences less gravity, causing it to cool and darken, leading to a gravity darkening effect. So, Vega is basically a cosmic fitness guru's worst nightmare. Although for us stargazers, it still looks round because we're looking at it from Earth's pole end. However, if we saw it from a different angle, we'd get a very different view. One that might make us wonder if Vega has been sneaking some cosmic donuts behind our backs. But while we might joke about its equatorial waistline, there's no denying that Vega is still one of the brightest and most fascinating stars in our galaxy. But if you want something actually bright, then how about a supernova? Supernovas are giant space booms that occur when stars reach the end of their life cycle. It's like the grand finale of a fireworks show, but on a cosmic scale, they release more energy in a few seconds than our sun will produce in its entire lifetime. And this is exactly what happened to the next star of our show. This celestial object with a weird name. But there's a catch. It isn't your average supernova, even though this star made a blast in 2014 and started to fade away like usual. Recently, it made an unexpected comeback and brightened once more. Talk about a dramatic entrance. And if that wasn't enough, this thing continued to fade and brighten at least 5 times in total, which is a bit like a yo-yo. It's like the star just couldn't make up its mind about whether it wanted to stay bright or fade away into the abyss. Also, when scientists measured the supernova spectrum, they found that it was evolving 10 times slower than other stars. Maybe it's a supernova that just wants to enjoy its golden years. All in all, this object is a real mystery. But this is not the only star suffering from the 2-in-1 syndrome. At first glance, my Camelopardalis appears to be a fairly common star, but after a closer look, astronomers concluded it was actually 2 stars in one. These 2 stars are orbiting each other at over 600,000 mph. It's a contact binary star system, which means that the stars are so close together that they share a common envelope. In other words, they're so close to each other that they're practically smooching. These celestial Romeo and Juliet are one of the most massive known binary stars out there. Each of them individually weighs in at a whopping 32 and 38 solar masses, respectively. Astronomers also think that they might be on the brink of a stellar merger, which means that one day they might just combine into one giant superstar. Wow, who knew space could be so romantic? Next, introducing another long name, HD 140283, also known as Methuselah's star. This little guy in the constellation Libra has been around for a while, and by a while, I mean a really long time. Actually, scientists used to think it was older than the universe itself. Just imagine if it turned out to be true, but eventually, they figured out that it's actually around 14.8 billion years old, a peer of our universe. That's still pretty impressive, though. This star is so old, it remembers when the Milky Way was just a baby galaxy. But despite all that, this star still has some life left in it. It's just starting to expand into a red giant, which is kind of like when you hit your 30s. Talk about aging well. But if all these things are somewhat comprehensible, then how about a star that was literally named UTF star? By scientists. I'm not kidding. At least it used to be. Now it's called Tabby's star. It also has a more scientific name, but that one is a bit of a mouthful. But what's really bizarre about this star is its irregular dimming. For some reason, it doesn't glow like a normal star, but blinks, as if someone turns on and off a flashlight. And it's not just a little dip, we're talking up to a 22% drop in light. So it's not because it sometimes gets blocked by a planet or something. Scientists have come up with all sorts of explanations for this strange behavior, from comets to dust, to even an extraterrestrial megastructure. That's right. But before your imagination runs too wild, it's important to note that the most likely explanation is just plain old dust. Perhaps the star is surrounded by some kind of dust cloud, and sometimes it prevents us from seeing it clearly. Although this explanation is still not 100% confirmed, there are still plenty of mysteries surrounding Tabby's star. One thing's for sure, it may be a bit of an oddball, but that's what makes it so fascinating. So there you have it, folks. We're left in awe of the incredible diversity and strangeness of the cosmos. There's so much more to discover out there, so let's keep exploring and keep being amazed by the wonders of the universe.
Mars is the Earth's space cousin. It's the fourth planet in our solar system, about half the size of the Earth. It also has two small moon buddies, Phobos and Deimos. These moons are shaped like potatoes. Phobos is the drama king, moving closer to Mars and planning a crash landing in about 50 million years. Deimos is much calmer though, hanging out farther away from Mars. Mars got a cool nickname, the Red Planet, thanks to its rusty red surface. This color was so bright that it was spotted by astronomers many years ago. Even you can sometimes see it in the sky with the naked eye, a small scarlet dot. And maybe it has hot vibes, but in reality, Mars is a very cold desert. The temperatures there can drop as low as 153 degrees Celsius. But was Mars always nothing more than a rusty-looking desert? Actually, no. Scientists believe that perhaps many years ago, this planet was similar to ours. Meet Curiosity, the detective rover made by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Scientists want to know all about the Martian weather, landscape, and other stuff like that. Curiosity is a pretty heavy car-sized robot. It weighs about 900 kilograms. It embarked on its journey on November 26, 2011. The rover pulled off a landing on Mars on August 6, 2012. Originally, Curiosity's mission was supposed to last for 2 years, but it's still going strong. Curiosity is basically a space lab on wheels. It's packed with cameras, spectrometers, radiation detectors, and sensors to sniff out the Martian environment. As Curiosity roams around, it rewinds Mars's history. And during its mission, the rover discovered something incredible: signs of lakes and rivers from long ago. You see, Curiosity's favorite spot to play around is Gale Crater. It's a prehistoric Martian oasis where water might have hung out. There's this huge mountain in the middle called Mount Sharp. This place is taller than 10 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other, and it's got layers of rocks that hold Mars's ancient secrets. Recently, scientists spotted something great when studying Curiosity's data: mud cracks. What's so surprising about that? Well, these aren't just any old cracks. They're like messages from the past. They mean that the Martian ground used to get wet and then dry out again. The mud on the ground would shrink and crack during the drying phases, making these T-shaped junctions. Moreover, it seems like the ground on Mars went through several wet-dry cycles. It happened maybe up to 10 times. This made the junctions turn into Y-shaped cracks. When a bunch of Y-shaped cracks got together, they made a super cool pattern, something like a patchwork of hexagons. It looks just like honeycombs, or even a dragon's skin. Each of these hexagons are the size of candy. Similar cycles have happened on Earth, and they're linked to the birth of life. When water dries up, it leaves behind concentrated stuff that's great for chemical reactions. And these reactions might be the same ones that kickstart life. These hexagons have been hanging around for a really long time, billions of years. But that means that Mars once had a climate, kind of like Earth's, and maybe even life. In fact, the red planet even has some signs of water right now, in the form of hidden ice at the poles. Mars has the North and South poles, and just like with the Earth, they're red planet's ice caps. Picture the North Cap as a big icy pancake about 998 kilometers wide. The South Cap is a bit smaller, about 354 kilometers wide, but it's got a thicker ice layer, almost like a snowball with a strong shell. When it's winter at the poles, it's an incredibly long nighttime. No sunlight, just chilly darkness. During that time, around 30% of the air turns into frozen CO2. It's dry ice, the same stuff that's often used in horror movies. But when the poles wake up to sunlight, the dry ice turns back into gas. All this freezing and thawing makes clouds and frost, just like on Earth. One time, a rover named Opportunity even caught some clouds made of water ice. But it doesn't necessarily mean Mars was once thriving just like the Earth. Life needs more than just wet, dry cycles to pop up. It needs the right atmosphere and other special ingredients. We're not sure if Mars had all of those, and even if it did, there's no guarantee that life actually happened. But this raises another very important question. Has Mars ever hosted tiny living creatures? Curiosity isn't the only robot that tries to find the answer to that. There's also a rover called Perseverance. It's trying to find clues about Martian life. It's digging into an old Martian crater, once filled with water. And like a space archaeologist, Perseverance is searching for fossilized signs of ancient critters. And here's the funny thing. Some scientists think that we've stumbled upon it almost half a century ago. The only problem is, we might have accidentally destroyed it. It happened even before Curiosity started rolling around Mars. Back in the 1980s, two cool NASA's landers, Viking 1 and Viking 2, made a pit stop on the Red Planet. These landers took a selfie, and then they also did some funky experiments on the Martian soil, all in the name of finding signs of life. What they found is some weird organic stuff called perchlorate. It's a compound that we use in fireworks or rocket fuel, but most results didn't seem that promising. They even mixed up some soil with water and nutrients, hoping that if there were Martian microbes, they'd snack on the goodies and return radioactive gas as a result. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Now, here's the problem. Some scientists think that maybe the water they added back then actually destroyed those tiny Martian critters. Poor microbes were just hanging out and suddenly got soaked by a bunch of weird liquid. Something like this wouldn't be very pleasant for the Earth microbes. They live inside rocks, and they're sucking water from the air. Pouring water on them would result in a total disaster. So, of course, giving them nutrients after that wouldn't do anything. If you've just barely survived a water bath, you're probably not in the mood for a feast. Perhaps these Martian buddies might have something called hydrogen peroxide in their cells. It helps them live in an extreme environment. If that's true, it could explain all those results from the experiments. You see, the instruments heated up the samples. So if there was hydrogen peroxide, it would have gone boom, wiping off the little guys and turning their cozy homes instantly. Imagine how ridiculous it would be if it turns out that we accidentally destroyed the only signs of life on Mars. Ideally, we need a new mission to Mars to test this theory. Let's hope it's not true. In any case, the journey isn't over. There are more missions planned for Mars, and humans might even visit this planet someday. The next mission is the Mars Sample Return. It's a super cool teamwork project between NASA and ESA. They're teaming up to bring back souvenirs from Mars, collected by NASA's trusty Mars Perseverance rover. There's going to be a whole bunch of spaceships. They'll work together to bring these precious Mars samples back. The samples are planned to arrive on Earth in the early to mid-2030s. And the fun doesn't stop at Mars. Our Mars missions are a warm-up for an even bigger adventure, exploring icy moons around Saturn and Jupiter. These moons have hidden oceans beneath their icy surfaces, and who knows what kinds of space secrets they're hiding. But whether it's Mars, icy moons, or beyond, our quest to find extraterrestrial life continues. In addition, we are slowly starting to find more and more organic materials on Mars, and maybe one day, we'll finally find some microbes in our solar system. Let's hope for it and stay tuned.
There's a weird structure on Mars, a square, a near-perfect square, standing alone in the endless red desert, and it looks too perfect. Too precise to be anything but artificial. Nature is chaotic, and it rarely makes things look so deliberate. Could it be SpongeBob? Nya? So, the internet took one look at it and lost its mind, as the internet tends to do. The image spread like a virus on social media, igniting every conspiracy theory you can think of. Some were convinced it was proof that intelligent life had once tread upon the Martian sands. Well, let's dive in and sort it out. The image is real, and it's really old. The thing, not the picture. NASA's Mars Orbiter camera snapped it in 2001, capturing a tiny slice of Martian terrain, and there sat the square. Is that evidence for intelligent life? Well, Mars is an empty world now, a rust-colored desert, but once, long ago, it may have been something else entirely. A planet filled with roaring rivers, vast oceans, and thick clouds rolling across the sky. In a world like that, life, if it ever had a chance, could have taken root. And there's a possibility it did. Scientists think that life could have existed on Mars in a short period from around 4.1 to 3 billion years ago. It could have started during the early era of Martian history, called the Noachian period, and lasted all the way to the late Hesperian period. Meanwhile, on Earth, the first oceans were just forming. Life on our planet was just beginning, in the form of tiny bacteria in deep-sea hydrothermal vents. While Mars was already fully wet, on Earth, there were no plants or animals, just microscopic life trying to survive. So, Mars took the lead in the life game. It had a much thicker atmosphere, which could have trapped enough heat to keep water liquid. Valley networks, huge traces across the red landscape, show us the incredible story of rainfall, rivers, and lakes. Huge asteroids were still hitting Mars at the time, and they could have brought organic molecules with them. But if that's true, what happened, and where did life go? A recent NASA study suggests that the answer is more complicated than we thought. Astronomers believed that something drastic happened to Mars, like boom, and its cozy climate was gone. Its atmosphere thinned. Without a strong magnetic field like Earth's to protect it, solar radiation stripped away the air, leaving Mars cold and dry. The ocean simply evaporated. Some of the water escaped into space, while the rest froze underground, or became locked in polar ice caps. Today, all that remains is a ghostly memory, dry channels and salty mineral deposits. But it looks like the transition wasn't sudden at all. It was slow and gradual. The planet was changing from wet and warm to cold and dry over millions of years. In fact, Mars kept its ocean even after the temperatures dropped to freezing. Some parts of Mars, especially the northern lowlands, might have remained wet for many, many centuries. Shouldn't the water freeze when it gets below 0 degrees Celsius? Well, yes, but there are many reasons why this miracle happened, like Mars' thick atmosphere and warm water traveling through currents. And during that time we mentioned before, from Noachian to late Hesperian, life could have found a way. Microbes on Earth thrive in some of the harshest places, beneath Antarctic ice, in deep-sea vents, in toxic volcanic lakes. Life doesn't care. So these times in Martian history would be amazing for it. But don't be mistaken, Mars was never a paradise. Even during its cozy times, it wasn't as lush and green as we might imagine. In its early days, Mars was something more extreme, something closer to the young Earth. During the Noachian period, it was warm, yet wet. Then the climate shifted into the Hesperian period. Oceans were stretching across the northern lowlands, temperatures dropped, and snow piled high, forming massive glaciers in the south, transforming the planet into an icy world. Finding microscopic life at that time is possible, but an intelligent civilization? That's less than likely. The square that went viral isn't evidence for intelligent life yet, and here's why. First things first, people freak out because nature doesn't make straight lines. But that's not really true. Actually, nature does it all the time. For example, here on Earth, we have the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, a beautiful field of hexagonal basalt columns. These are completely natural. They're formed by volcanic activity. There's also the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Remember it from the Close Encounters movie in the 80s? That's a symmetrical rock formation, and it was created by erosion. However, if we looked at these things from space, they'd look artificial. So, what is this square? How about a fracture pattern in the rock, or some terrain that's broken apart along straight lines due to stress? This happens on Earth all the time when rock expands and contracts over time. And on Mars, the surface is just constantly battered by meteors, wind, and extreme temperature shifts. No wonder rock would get stressed. What happens here is another case of pareidolia. It's our brain's favorite thing to spot patterns in something random. We evolved like this. So, sometimes we might look at natural objects and see insane stuff. Faces on trees, animals in clouds, shapes, and so on. Besides, NASA has been photographing Mars for decades. We have high-resolution images of craters, mountains, valleys, riverbeds, everything. Wouldn't an ancient civilization leave us, well, something better than some square-like rock? Even though things erode over time, we'd find more signs, roads, foundations, artifacts, ruins, or at least something. Though, to be fair, we do see something. The square wouldn't be the first time Mars has played tricks on us. Over the years, we've spotted everything from tunnels to carved faces, even Bigfoot, or this doorway, for example, a perfectly cut rectangular opening. That's what people saw when NASA's Curiosity rover sent back an image of the East Cliffs on Mount Sharp. It's almost like an ancient passage leading deep into the surface. You just need to go in to find some fantastic underground base. Well, NASA decided to take a closer look at it. Turns out, it's just 0.5 centimeters tall and 40.6 centimeters wide, the size of a dog door. That's because what we're looking at isn't a doorway, but an open fracture, a break in the rock that happens naturally over time. These kinds of cracks are extremely common, both on Earth and on Mars. They form when bedrock is stressed, expands, contracts, or gets eroded by wind and time. If you walked through a desert here on Earth, you'd see plenty of similar shapes. Canyons, cliffs, and even boulders have fractures that, from the right angle, might look like doorways. They're just not getting photographed by NASA. Also, the straightness of lines turned out to be just a trick of perspective. If you zoom out, you'll see that it's just one small break in a much bigger rock formation, or the infamous Cydonia face. The photo was taken back in 1976 by NASA's Viking 1 orbiter when it was scanning Mars. In the region known as Cydonia, it captured what looked like a massive humanoid face. A rocky formation about 1.9 kilometers long. And this one face inspired books, documentaries, movies, and podcasts. But when NASA's Viking orbiters first took pictures of Cydonia, the cameras weren't super advanced. The image of the face had a low resolution and made the details fuzzy. NASA's later missions had far better cameras, and when Mars Global Surveyor revisited Cydonia in 2001, the truth was undeniable. The face was just a hill, a lumpy rock formation with ridges and depressions carved by wind and erosion. And in 2006, during another mission, a colored image with insanely high detail was made. No traces of face left there whatsoever. That's another pareidolia trick for you. Mars has plenty of secrets left to uncover, but they will be related to its fascinating history, not some secret ancient civilization. The conclusion is, don't trust everything you see online. Sometimes a mysterious rock is just a rock. It's staring at you, and you're staring at it. A giant eye that seems to be pulling you into an abyss. You're hovering over it in your space copter. But however scared you might be, you still need to do your job. So, you send your copter down to the surface of the red planet. Right, that's where you are, on Mars. But first things first, you take a moment to remember everything you know about the fourth planet from the Sun. It's the last of the inner planets. Those are the planets that lie within the asteroid belt. They're also called terrestrial since they're made up of rocks and metals. The atmosphere of Mars is much thinner than Earth's. It contains 95% carbon dioxide and a mere 1% of oxygen. In other words, don't even think about pulling off your helmet. Anyway, there's no time to waste. You land on the surface of the planet and find yourself in a brownish red world. That's a good thing you're wearing a spacesuit. The place is freezing cold. The thermometer sewn into the sleeve of your suit shows 80 EF. Time to make your first step on the Martian surface. The planet looks quite colorful, and the hue of a particular area depends on the minerals that make up the soil. The ground under your feet is covered with fine dust. It looks like rust. The same orange dust is in the air. Good thing you have your own supply of oxygen and don't need to breathe Martian air. The layer of this dust covering the surface of Mars can be from 6 to 40 feet thick. You hope you'll avoid getting swallowed by some Martian quicksand. You start walking, feeling very light. Mars is just 15% of our planet's volume and a mere 11% of Earth's mass. It means that gravity here is much weaker. Its pull is 38% as strong as the pull of gravity on the surface of Earth. You jump up and down, then try to run several hundred feet. Ha! You haven't even broken a sweat. What makes it harder for you to explore the place on foot is that the planet's surface is rocky, covered with craters and volcanoes, old dry lake beds and canyons. You see something huge towering on the horizon, but you try to suppress your curiosity. You'll have enough time to figure out what it is later. Suddenly, a massive cloud appears in the distance. It looks as if a huge herd of horses approaching you. In reality, you'd better get back into your copter and fly away as fast as you can. That's one of Mars' infamous dust storms. They mostly occur during the summer in the southern hemisphere of the red planet. They can sometimes cover the entire planet, and you can see the largest ones from Earth. You hop into your copter and set a course for the eye that scared you so much. Winding channels that look like veins run through the eyeball. But the closer you get, the less it looks like an actual eye. Soon, you realize it's a crater. It's giant, almost 19 miles across. Around the crater, which looks as if it has a pupil, there are other, even bigger craters. They likely formed billions of years ago. That's when Mars had to withstand multiple attacks of space rocks. But why is the eye crater darker than the surrounding landscape? Scientists think that once, there was Martian water in the enormous pit. Remember those channels? They were likely carrying that water. And since the crater was filled with water, it stopped some substances and minerals from eroding away. Now, remember that towering something on the horizon? It's time to go and explore it. When you come close, you realize it's the largest shield volcano in the entire solar system, Olympus Mons. It's more than 370 miles in diameter, which is almost the same size as the state of Arizona. You tilt your head, wow. The mountain is 16 miles high. It's also rimmed by 4-mile-high cliffs. To picture the sheer size of the volcano, let's make some comparisons. The largest volcano on Earth is Mauna Loa, towering around 2.5 miles above sea level and stretching 75 miles across. Sounds impressive, but the volume of Olympus Mons is around 100 times larger than that of Mauna Loa. The Martian giant could swallow the whole chain of Hawaiian Islands from Kauai to Hawaii. But why is this volcano so large? It might be the result of lower surface gravity and higher eruption rates. Or the reason may be the red planet's crust, which is very different from Earth's. It's static. On our planet, the crust is made up of 15 to 20 moving tectonic plates. As plates move over hotspots producing lava, new volcanoes form, and the already existing ones become extinct. That's why lava can get to the surface through many vents. But on Mars, the crust isn't broken into the same tectonic plates as on Earth. And the lava has nothing to do but pile in one very, very large volcano. So, how about getting closer to the enormous mountain? But once you step out of your copter on Martian soil, the ground under your feet starts shaking. That's a Marsquake. But how can it happen if Mars doesn't have actively shifting tectonic plates? Specialists from NASA are sure Marsquakes occur when energy inside the planet gets suddenly released. It leads to rock fractures and cracks in the planet's crust. Another powerful jolt, and one of such cracks opens right next to you. You fall to the ground afraid to move, but soon everything calms down. You wait for a couple of minutes just to be sure, and get up. Oh, look! Here's a perfect opportunity to explore the insides of the red planet. The crack is large enough to send a special research robot. The planet's crust is thin and consists of volcanic basalt rock. The mantle that surrounds the core of the planet is made up of thick silicates, oxygen, and some other minerals. You can probably compare it with soft, rocky toothpaste. Mars' mantle is also much thinner than Earth's. It's just 800 to 1,900 miles thick. As for the planet's core, it's made mostly of iron, nickel, and sulfur, and is between 900 and 1,200 miles wide. This core doesn't move. That's why Mars doesn't have a planet-wide magnetic field. Unfortunately, your drone is now lost in the depths of the red planet. You leave it there and continue your exploration. Your next destination is Valles Marineris. It sounds more like an Italian red sauce, but it's really an enormous canyon, or rather, a canyon system that runs along Mars' equator. It's as awe-inspiring as Olympus Mons, more than 2,600 miles long and over 4 miles deep. The thing is so huge it could span the entire continental United States from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean. Let's make another comparison. One of the most famous canyons on Earth is the Grand Canyon in Arizona, but it's 10 times shorter and around 4 times less deep than the canyon on Mars. Some scientists think that Valle Marineris is the edge of an enormous tectonic plate. It moves so slowly that almost nothing has happened in that region over millions of years, and the movement of this plate probably began 3.5 billion years ago. Anyway, the only thing left on your today's to-do list is to visit Mars' moons. They're among the tiniest in the solar system. Phobos is the larger of the two. It orbits a mere 3,700 miles above the surface of Mars. There's no other known moon that travels closer to its mother planet. It whips around the red planet 3 times a day, while the second moon, Deimos, needs 30 hours to complete one orbit. Phobos is getting closer and closer to Mars, about 6 FT each 100 years. Within the next 50 million years, it'll either crash into the planet or break apart and form a ring. Happy but tired, you return to your spaceship. Tomorrow, you'll continue exploring the magnificent red planet. And who knows what discoveries are awaiting you. Something is nearing the surface of the planet. It looks like a fireball hurtling closer and closer at a truly incredible speed. Soon it becomes obvious that the collision is inevitable. Bam! The impact leaves a huge crater. It evaporates thousands of cubic miles of solid rock, and it also sets off a series of terrible natural disasters. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. You believe I'm talking about the catastrophic collision that occurred around 66 million years ago on Earth. You know, the one responsible for the extinction of non-avian dinosaurs and 3/4 of other life forms on our planet. But no, the disaster I'm talking about happened on a different planet. Scientists think that our close neighbor, Mars, once experienced the same catastrophe that struck Earth. It happened around 3.4 billion years ago. An asteroid collision might have caused a mega tsunami on the red planet, similar to the one caused by the Chicxulub impact on Earth. Scientists have identified an impact crater on Mars that was probably left by a comet or asteroid collision with the surface of the planet. Most likely, the space body landed in an ocean in the Martian northern lowlands, and the impact was so powerful that it caused a mega tsunami. Before the latest studies, the exact location of the impact crater wasn't verified. It was just a theory. To confirm it, a team of astronomers simulated a comet and asteroid collision in the area where they supposed the impact crater was. They even named this crater Pole. Pole is 68 miles across and lies in a region that is almost 400 feet below the supposed sea level. Anyway, the simulations formed several craters of the same size as Pole. One of the simulations claimed that these craters had been left by a 5-mile-wide asteroid that had encountered strong ground resistance. The other simulation showed that the craters had been caused by a bit smaller asteroid that met a weaker ground resistance. But according to both simulations, the impact crater was almost 70 miles in diameter, and the collisions produced mega tsunamis up to 900 miles away from the center of the impact site. The simulations also helped scientists estimate the height of the tsunami. It was about 820 feet tall, almost as tall as the Eiffel Tower. The authors of the study also suggest that the Pole crater might be similar to the Chicxulub impact crater on our planet. The Chicxulub asteroid, as we now know it, is believed to come from the outer reaches of the solar system. This space body was at least 6 miles across. It crashed into the shallow seawaters near the Yucatan Peninsula. This splashdown was so powerful that it left its signature on the entire face of the planet. In 2021, researchers found out that the collision had carved mega ripples into Earth's crust in the region of modern-day central Louisiana. An even newer study suggests that the asteroid also triggered a tsunami so devastating it eroded seafloor sediments half a world away. The team of scientists remodeled the events of the first 10 minutes after the impact, and the model showed that the asteroid had produced waves up to 30,000 times greater than one of the largest tsunamis people have ever recorded, the Indian Ocean tsunami that hit Indonesia in 2004. The collision displaced so much water that it created a wave almost a mile high. That's like 2 Burj Khalifas, which is the tallest construction in the world, stacked one on top of the other. And of course, all that empty place didn't stay empty for long. The ocean gushed back to fill the crater, but in the process, it only ricocheted off the crater's rim, which produced even more waves. After that, tsunami waves that were more than 33 feet tall traveled around the world at a speed of 3 feet per second, lashing at all coastlines on their way. Imagine a 3-story building rushing up to you. No wonder the largest and fastest moving waves occurred near the impact area in the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Those rose more than 330 feet tall, which is taller than the Statue of Liberty, and moved at speed 10 times greater than more distant tsunami waves. But back to the red planet. Some experts think that not 1 but 2 mega tsunamis could happen on Mars. They could be triggered by a pair of meteor impacts that were several millions of years apart. Between these 2 collisions, Mars went through a period of climate changes. As a result, liquid water on its surface turned into ice. In other words, the first asteroid impact most likely produced waves composed of liquid water, and the second tsunami was probably formed by rounded chunks of ice water. By the way, the largest asteroid to have ever crashed into Earth might not actually be the one that ended dinosaurs. A much more catastrophic collision likely happened about 3.5 billion years ago. New evidence scientists found in northwestern Australia suggests that the asteroid I'm talking about was 12 to 18 miles across. It struck Earth at immense speed, releasing an unimaginable amount of energy. This made me think, what if something like that happened these days? More than 30,000 objects that are circling Earth these days can potentially crash into our planet. NASA considers around 1,500 of them to be potentially hazardous. These space rocks are the remains left after the solar system was formed some 4.6 billion years ago. For example, in 2004, astronomers discovered a huge asteroid nearing Earth. The first observations showed that the chance of the space rock hitting our planet was less than 3%. The asteroid was named Apophis. It's more than 1,200 feet across and weighs about 20 million tons. It's supposed to streak across the sky on April 13th, 2029. Apophis will pass at a distance of 19,000 miles away from Earth's surface. But even though this space rock might miss our planet in 2029, it doesn't mean it won't return 15 years later in 2036. If such an object hits our planet, the consequences will be unpredictable. They can vary from shattered glass and broken windows to most life forms getting wiped off the face of the Earth. And it'll probably affect the internet. That last thought is truly scary. But luckily, modern technologies are likely to help us avoid any catastrophic consequences. Experts have developed several ways to prevent a real-life disaster movie from happening. For one thing, we could use a spacecraft to knock this visitor from outer space off its course. Or it could somehow be blasted into pieces. Scientists could also slow the thing down with the help of concentrated sunlight, or people could probably tug it away with a gravity tractor. That's a theoretical spacecraft that can influence objects in space without touching them. In sci-fi movies, a huge asteroid often sneaks up on Earth and turns out to be a nasty surprise to astronomers. It hurtles toward our planet at breakneck speed and gets discovered just weeks or even days before the collision. In reality, scientists are constantly watching all large objects in Earth's neighborhood. It means there would be plenty of time to do something before the inevitable happened. There are 3 kinds of missions scientists could prepare at short notice. Type 0, when a heavy spacecraft hurtles toward the intruder with one single goal, to knock it off its course. In this case, astronomers would have to rely on the already available information. The Type 1 mission would involve a scout. It would be launched first to get more close-up information about the space rock. Only after that, the main spacecraft would be launched. With more precise information, its journey would be way more productive. And if scientists chose the Type 2 mission, they would send a scout and a small spacecraft at the same time. The spacecraft would knock the asteroid a bit off its course. Then, the scout would collect all the necessary information. Based on this data, the spacecraft would finish its job with a more fine-tuned second push. If none of these methods worked, people could try going deep underground, or even build a shelter on the ocean floor. But in this case, we'd need to find sources of energy that could help us survive for at least several decades. Plus, people would have to create a life support system that could somehow keep air and water fresh.